Welcome. Welcome the Mad Doctor, Adega Outlaw! Your host, Stone Cold Loki! Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to 7 Kinds of Mischief! The Blood Witch, a dark high fantasy novel by renowned author Dr. Adega Outlaw. Get your copy of The Blood Witch, which is on sale now on Kindle and Amazon.com, or just click the link in the description of this video.
It's time to play. Play in the blood of humanity. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you doing?
Not bad. Not bad at all. Thank you. And by the way, people, those commercials, Loki does them on his own. I did not ask him to do that, but it shows you what kind of a person he is. When he has a friend, he really does support them wholeheartedly, and I appreciate him doing that.
You put your money where your mouth is, brother. So not to make this like a, oh my God, let me sell a Adega Outlaw stream. He put his money where his mouth was. He has said time and time again that these people do not care about their content. They do not care about canon. They do not care about telling good stories, wonderful stories, insightful stories. But Adega does, ladies and gentlemen. So Adega writes wonderful kick-ass novels like Evolution, like The Blood Witch, and we need to support that. Those are the things we need to support, is our independent content creators that care about bringing you a wonderful, insightful story instead of the dreck we get on TV nowadays. So, of course, I'm going to support that. And I'm going to put my money where my mouth is, and I'm going to buy content that I love, not content that sucks. So,
thank you. Speaking of which, with stories and stuff, you got me thinking this morning with Pops when you were talking about writing. And I have, and I've showed you before, and some of you may have seen it sometimes when I've been live, the bookcase is often behind me. And you'll notice some of those books are quite old. I get them sometimes for very cheap because more often than not, they have not been well taken care of. And yet the information in them is still pretty solid. I have one here. This is a lecture that I wanted to share that is very relevant. First, before I want to get that, I actually want to get to a tweet. Believe it or not, something from Twitter. There was this guy who is defending the topic that you discussed this morning. Well, I guess it's a lady, Meg Dowell, checkmark. It has in quotes, bad writing isn't a valid criticism unless you can elaborate on the specific flaws and why they contribute to the lesser quality story. Certain Star Wars fans either can't do that or won't, for reasons. Actually, it means that she's blind to all the reasons that people have been sharing, but the response was from a guy named Mr. Niggin Shell Man, and it says, oh, and it has this emoji with a guy rolling out this big scroll in front of Parliament. I got plenty with receipts if you have the time. Well, I brought some receipts in one of my very old books. I shared a picture with Loki from someone you all know. But what I'm going to share with you, I doubt if there is one of you who have heard what I'm going to read, I will be impressed. But this is from one of our favorites, and I know
Give me
most of you
just a
like this.
second to get the
No, you
picture up.
can. We're not in any rush. From a man called Edgar Allan Poe. This is a lecture by Poe, poet and prose. This is written a long time ago in older English, so forgive me if I stumble over it. Born in Boston, Massachusetts, January 19th, 1809, died in Baltimore, Maryland, October 7th, 1849. Just 40 years old. See what life has done to him? He looks a lot older than 40. It's delivered in the later years of his life in Boston at various other places, partly as stated in Stadman and Woodbury's edition of Poe's works. So if you have that, good for you, and you probably heard this. But like I said, I doubt most of you have heard what I'm going to read. As an allegory to performance, the skillful blending of criticism with the concrete illustrations readers, this facilitates example of Poe's manner in analytic discussion, as it is also a striking presentation of his views on poetic theory and practice. Okay, I'm going to make a little bit of noise so I can get this thing positioned to where I can read it without my arms giving me too much issues. Some of this is going to sound a little droll, and I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's quite extensive. We will get into a couple of pieces of poetry that he says are examples of his point. But I'm only going to read a portion of it, and one of them highlights exactly the same argument that Loki and Pops had this morning. And this was over 100 or 200 years ago. Here we go. In speaking of the poetic principle, I have no design to be either thorough or profound, while discussing very much at random and essentially of what we'll call poetry. My principal prose will be to cite for consideration some of the few minor English or American poems which best suit my own taste or which, upon my own fancy, have left the most definitive impression. Remember that, definitive impression. By minor poems, I mean, of course, poems of little length. And here, in the beginning, poetry me to say a few words in regard to somewhat particular principle, which, whether rightful or wrongful, has always had its influence in my own critical esteem of poetry. I hold that a long poem does not exist. I maintain that the phrase a long poem is simply a flat contradiction of terms. I need scarcely observe that a poem deserves its title only inasmuch as it exists by elevating the soul. The value of the poem is in the ratio of the elevating excitement. But all excitements are, through a physical necessity, transient. That degree of excitement which would entitle a poem to be so called at all cannot be sustained throughout the composition of any length. After the lapse of a half hour or an hour, at the very utmost, it flags, fails, a revulsion ensues, and then the poem is in effect and in fact no longer such. There are no doubt many who have found difficulty in reconciling the criticism dictum that the Paradise Lost is to be devoutly admired throughout, with the absolute impossibility of maintaining for it, during puzzle, the amount of enthusiasm which the critical dictum would demand. This great work, in fact, is to be regarded as poetic only when losing sight of the vital requisite that all works of art, utility, were views in merely as series of minor poems, So basically what he's saying, Paradise Lost is not one big poem. It's a bunch of little ones to keep the emotion going. It's kind of a fascinating way he looks at things. If to preserve its unity, its totality of effect and impression, we read it, as would be necessary, at a single setting, the result is but constant alternation of excitement and depression. After a passage of what we feel to be true poetry, there follows, inadvertently, a passage of platitude which no critical pre-prejudice can force us to admire. But if, upon completing the work, we read it again, omitting the first book, that is to say, commencing with the second, we shall be surprised at now finding that the admirable which we before condemned, that the condemnable which we previously so much admired. It follows from all that this is ultimate, aggregate, or absolute effect of even the best epic under the sun is nullity. And this is precisely the fact. We're almost to the main point that I wanted to get. In regard to the Iliad, we have, if not positive proof, at least very good reason for believing it intended as a series of lyrics. But granting the epic intention, I can say only that the work is based on an imperfect sense of art. The modern epic is of the substantious ancient model, but an inconsiderate and blindfolded imitation. But the day of these artist anomalies is over. If at any time any very long poem were popular in reality, which I doubt, it is at least clear that no very long poem will ever be popular again. That the extent of a poetical work is critis paribus. The measure of its merit seems undoubtedly, when we thus state it, a proposition sufficient absurd, yet we are indebted to it to the quarterly reviews. Quarterly reviews is basically it was a periodical that would critical or give reviews, criticisms of different works at the time. Surely there can be nothing in mere size abstract considered. There can be nothing in mere bulk, so far as volume is concerned, which has so continuously elicited admiration from these serturine pamphlets. A mountain, to be sure, by the mere sentiment of physical magnitude which conveys, does not impress us with a sense of sublime, but no man is impressed after this fashion by the material grandeur of the elevated Columbine. Okay, this is the part that I'm going to have to break it down. We'll read it. Most of you should be able to pick up on what he's saying, but I'm going to explain it anyway. Because, like I said, this is over 200-year-old English. Even the quarterlies have not instructed us to be so impressed by it. As yet, they have not insisted on our estimation Lamartine by the cubic foot or Pollock by the pound. But what else are we to infer from this continual prating about? Sustained effort. If by sustained effort any little gentleman has accomplished an epic, let us frankly commend him for the effort, if this indeed be the thing commendable. But let us forbear praising the epic of the effort's account. It is to be hoped that common sense in the time to come, he's speaking about us, very prophetic. It is to be hoped that common sense in the time to come will prefer deciding upon a work of art rather by the impression it makes, by the effect it produces, than by the time it took to impress the effect, or by the amount of sustained effort which had been found necessary in efficacy the impression. The fact is that perseverance is one thing and genius is quite another. Nor can all the quarterlies in Christendom confound them. By and by, this proposition, which by many which I have been just urging, will be received as self-evident. In the meantime, by generally condemning as falsities, they will not be essentially damaged as truths. What he has said, and this again is 200 years ago, just because a lot of effort was put into it, just because there is a lot of words attributed to it, doesn't make it praiseworthy. The genius, the impression upon the spirit and the mind that is left in the reader, the stronger it is, the more profound it is, the better the work. Not simply because we put a lot of money into this, not simply because we have a whole staff of writers that put a lot of time in it. We demand that you admire it because of all our effort. Poe himself said, effort means nothing. It is the outcome of the impression on the soul that means everything for it to be considered art. All right. I just want to get into one Poe poem that he uses that illustrates some of his points. It'll be in a paragraph and a half. On the other hand, it is clear that a poem may be improperly brief. Undue brevity degrades into mere epigranism. A very short poem, while now and then produces a brilliant or vivid, never produced a profound or enduring effect. There must be the steady pressing down of the stamp upon the wax. De Brager has wrought innumerable things pugnant and spirit stirring, but in general they have been too impromptuous to stamp themselves deeply into the public attention, and thus, as many feathers of fancy have been blown aloft into the whistle down the wind. As a remarkable instance of this effect of undue brevity in depressing a poem, in keeping it out of the popular view, is afforded by the following little example of Serenade. Okay, this is one of the poems that he holds in high regards, but at the time people thought was garbage. And you can decide through this poem whether or not you trust his opinion. After 200 years of people still cherishing his works, I think we know the answer to that. Here's the poem. I arise from dreams of thee in the first sweet sleep of night, when the winds are breathing low and the stars are shining bright. I arise from dreams of thee, and a spirit in my feet has led me, who knows how, to the chamber's window sweet. The wandering airs they faint on the dark, the silent stream. The chappic odors fail, like sweet thoughts in a dream. The nightingale's complaint, it dies upon her heart, as I must die on thine, O beloved as thou art. O lift me from the grass, I die, I faint, I fail. Let the love and kisses rain, O my lips and eyelids pale. My cheek is cold and white, alas. My heart beats loud and fast. Oh, press it close to thine again, where it will break at last. If you read it again, you'll understand this is just talking about a guy who woke up it could have been a woman, woke up in the middle of the night and was so impressed by the starry night and the things that he felt at that hour. And the people at the time thought that was a horrible poem, except Poe said, no, you're wrong. And now you have heard history that you're not going to hear anywhere else. And I feel very grateful to share with you that the same things that are being talked in our communities now about quality over quantity, about the stirring of the mind and enlightening the soul, as opposed to celebrating effort for effort's sake, is a theme that carries on from generation to generation. And we need to hold on to the brilliance of those who know how to enlighten your mind. All right. Hey, Pops, I justified you. It's too bad you came late. You'll have to go back and listen to this.
He did. He did. He absolutely did. Thank you, brother. Thank you. He was one of my favorite poets when I was a kid. I was a teenager, of course, because of, teenage angst.
Right.
Okay, so I've got something a little bit different tonight. I'm not going to be reading a story. I am going to be going over two articles that I think are very disturbing and point out some things that the regular public do not see every day when they look at a certain company that we oh so love. The Walt Disney Company has long presented itself as the voice for America's children. According to company lore, the animation studio was founded by a wise and kindly father figure, and its theme parks are the happiest place on earth for kids. In recent weeks, the company has entered into a political debate about Florida's parental rights and education legislation and sought to establish itself as a moral arbiter on children's education and sexuality. But behind its meticulously curated self-image, Disney has a long-standing problem with child predators gaining employment within the company and exploiting minors. In 2014, reporters at CNN published a bombshell 6-month investigation that discovered at least 35 Disney employees had been arrested for crimes against children, attempting to meet minors, and possession of certain paraphernalia over the previous 8 years. The stories are horrifying. In one case, police set up a sting operation that nabbed 3 Disney employees who believed they were soliciting from minors. Robert Kingsglover, who oversaw ride repairs at Disney World, enticed someone he thought was a 14-year-old girl for an intimate encounter in a private residence. Joel Torres, another Disney employee, allegedly brought condoms with him to have relations with a 14-year-old child. And Alan Trester, a concierge at the park's Animal Kingdom Lodge, went to meet a 14-year-old boy to fulfill a fantasy of being a big teddy bear. In all 3 cases, the men were met and then arrested by police who had set up the trap to catch child predators in the Orlando region. Kingsglover denied the charges. Trester admitted that he had had previous problem with a 15-year-old boy a few weeks prior to his arrest. Other Disney employees were found to have committed crimes using the internet. According to police and court records, custodial manager Cedric Cuthbert was caught downloading on a Disney work computer. Gift shop employee Paul Fazio was convicted for downloading multiple scenes with children engaging in certain acts with adults. And security guard William Marrero Maldonado was charged with 7 counts of promoting videos and photographs with children in them. Why Disney? Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd, who oversaw some of these investigations, explained why child predators would choose the Magic Kingdom as a place of employment. Wherever you find children, you'll find predators, he told reporters. Most employees work at Disney because they want a good, stable job for a great company. But there's always a few that are there because they can see children. They can live in a child's world. The evidence suggests he is right. Kingsglover, the Disney repairman who believed he was arranging a meetup with a minor female, told his perceived victim in the chat room that he really enjoyed giving and used the Disney brand to build trust. I work for Disney, so I love to see dads having fun with their kids, he wrote. I believe in treating a lady like a princess. I treat ladies with respect because that is how I hope my daughter gets treated. Another Disney employee, Patrick Holgerson, who was caught sending photos and having explicit chats with law enforcement officers posing as a 13-year-old boy, told investigators, I just have a strong connection with kids. I like working with kids. Disney allows me to do that. Disney has claimed to have extensive measures in place to provide a safe environment for children. There are reasons to doubt it. Even after the CNN report, Disney has seen a steady stream of employees caught in the dragnet for child predators. 2019, police arrested a Disney Cruise youth host for being with a 10-year-old boy in the ship's Oceaner Kids Lab. And later that year, arrested another Disney Cruise employee for doing something with a girl over 100 times at her home starting when she was 11 years old. The charges regarding all of this of the 10-year-old boy were later dropped when the parents did not want to bring the child in for testimony at trial. Since then, 3 Disney employees have been arrested for soliciting sex with minors. 2 have been arrested on 40 total counts of having stuff with children on it, and 4 more were arrested earlier this month in a sting operation targeting human trafficking, child predators, and prostitution. Even worse, despite its crystal clean image, Disney has come under fire for failing to report abuse. In 2014, after a crew member on the Disney Dream cruise ship was caught on security cameras with an 11-year-old girl, motherfucker, Disney's authorities failed to report the crime until after the ship had left port, which allowed the man to evade arrest. When one security officer protested, Disney authorities allegedly told her to keep her mouth shut about the crime. Moreover, according to advocates associated with the International Cruise Victims Organization, Disney's trade association lobbyists had worked to oppose and then water down federal legislation that would require stringent safety and reporting protocols for sexual abuse on cruise ships. Instead of joining the drumbeat, fashionable left-wing sexual theories, and promoting gender ideology in elementary school classrooms, a more productive campaign for Disney executives would be to identify and remove the predators within the company's own ranks. This was written by Christopher F. Rufo on March 31st, 2022 for The Social Order. Eye on the News. What I'm about to read next just happened on the 21st of this month, and that is Polk County Sheriff reports Walt Disney World bus driver arrested in latest child predator sting. We always have a Disney employee. What does he mean by that, ladies and gentlemen? He means every time they set up one of these stings in one of these buses, they have Disney employees that come in. Following the latest child predator sting conducted by authorities in Polk County, Florida, yet another Walt Disney World employee has been arrested on felony charges relating to the attempted sexual abuse of a minor. On June 17th, the Polk County Sheriff's Office announced that as part of their recent Operation Child Protector 2, focusing on online solicitation of minors, their team had arrested a total of 12 suspects who communicated with and solicited who they thought were children online. 4 suspects showed up to an undercover location in Polk County at separate times to meet who they thought were children to sexually batter them, explained the sheriff's office in their official press statement. Detectives obtained warrants for 8 other suspects who were arrested and booked into jails in their respective counties. Additional suspects were charged via warrant after transmitting images and or grooming and soliciting the children online. They are still at large in Florida, and detectives are actively looking for them. In all, detectives arrested 12 suspects who face a total of 49 felony charges. Their combined criminal history include 22 felonies and 31 misdemeanor charges. The youngest suspect arrested was 22 years old and the oldest 67 years old. Of the suspects who traveled to the location to have intimate contact with children, 1 suspect brought condoms, 1 has a criminal history, and 2 told detectives they were married. They were all from Central Florida. The sheriff's office further noted that of the suspects who had warrants, all of them sent explicit images and or video to who they thought were 13, 14, and 15-year-old girls. 2 of the suspects are from out of state and are in custody there in Michigan and Alabama. 3 of the suspects have criminal histories. DJ Ron and G with the $5 super chat. I can't wait to watch this on ePlay after my special dinner. I have no doubt that Dr. Adega has covered an interesting subject as well as Loki. Thank you, brother, and Skull, brother. I'll give you a clip after we get done with this. Notably, among those arrested was 30-year-old Zachary Hudson of Reunion, Florida, who, at least until the sting, was employed as a bus driver at the Walt Disney World theme park. As per the Polk County Sheriff's Office press release, from June 4th to 5th, Hudson engaged in an online conversation with an undercover detective posing as a 15-year-old girl. The detective asked Hudson if he was okay with her being 15, and he replied that he was, as long as my being older doesn't bother you, and later told her that age is just a number. Let me show you all what age is just a number looks like. This is what age is just a number looks like. How you doing there, bucko? How's it going, Zach? The conversation moved to text messaging, during which he described the things he wanted to do to her and told her that he would be honored to be her first. I'm just going to say it that way. To be her first. The release continues. He told the girl and the detectives upon his arrest that he's employed by Walt Disney World as a bus driver. He sent her nude pictures of himself. Detectives obtained a warrant for his arrest. He was taken into custody in Orlando and booked into the Orange County Jail. Following his arrest, Hudson was charged with 2 Class 3 felony offenses, 1 count use of a two-way communication device to commit a felony, and 1 count transmission of material harmful to a minor. Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd himself provided further details on both the sting and Hudson's arrest during a June 17th press conference held in the announcement of the operation's results. So we did a 2-week operation, just the recent example of what we've done over and over and over, to focus on those that are online seeking out your children. If it weren't for the heroic work of the undercover detectives from the Sheriff's Office, the Winter Haven Police Department, and the Auburndale Police Department, your children could have been the victims, but they weren't, because we stood in the gap between good and evil. Proceeding to take the press through the operation's arrest list suspect by suspect, Judd eventually presented the audience with Hudson's mugshot, taken at a point in time when he was actually wearing his full Walt Disney World work uniform, complete with name tag, and declared, "Listen, ladies and gentlemen, what would an operation be? Either a pornography investigation or a predator operation or a human trafficking operation without a Disney employee. We always have a Disney employee, sometimes more than one. This is Zachary Hudson. That's right, he's a bus driver for Disney. He did not travel, but he sent pictures and lewd pictures of himself to what he thought was a 15-year-old girl." Recalling Hudson's actions, Judd continued, and he said to her while grooming her, "What we said could get us all in trouble," he said, and he would like to wrap his arms around and feel her small, little body. Then he said, "Are you ready for this? You can't make this shit up. I don't want to sound creepy." "Well, you just sounded creepy," the sheriff declared. He added, so he reiterated to what he thought was this little girl that she needed to keep it quiet. It has to be our little secret, because he said, I could go to jail, but I'd risk it for spending a little time with you. I'd risk going to jail. "Well, when we arrested him, he confessed," said Judd quickly before noting, "Oh, newsflash, this will make Disney extra happy. He was doing this while he was on the clock for Disney. So if your boss was running late at Disney, he was taking pictures of himself and talking to what he thought was a little girl."
We've talked about Disney many times before. These stories make me so, well, I'm pissed at this point. I've told, and many of you remember what I talked about my son, how close it got there at Disney by a Disney employee who's now rotting in jail. Yeah.
Why did I talk about this tonight? Because this is not stopping. This is continuing to go on and on and on. This isn't stopping. It's been going on for years. These people, they're going to lose their self-governance status, and you're going to find out that there's been all kinds of horrible shit going on at this park that you never ever knew about, that you never knew was going on, because they're self-governed. They have their own security. Police don't go in Disney. They don't do investigations at Disney. These people do not deserve to be self-governed, do their own investigations, and not have the police come in and deal with anything and do an investigation. From the cruise ship, when they told them to keep their mouths shut about it, to all the stuff that's going on and the stuff that goes on in the park, no. And the more people that know about this, the better.
Absolutely.
So that that last article was from Spencer Bakuli, written on June 21st, just a couple days ago, over at Bounding into Comics. I absolutely love those guys. I can't ever say anything good enough about those guys because they work their butts off over there. But this is the kind of shit we need to know about. And the more eyes that are on this, the less they can get away with it. And when that wall of protection comes down, and they can't just sweep it under the rug anymore and say just everybody keep quiet about it, when they've got the police knocking on their door, when they're doing investigations inside the park, maybe we're going to get more answers than we ever wanted. And I have a feeling that's the way it's going to be. So that is why I read those two articles tonight. I know usually I tell a story, but I saw both of those the other day, and I really wanted to share those with you guys. That's why I don't want to do it.
For parents and grandparents, just remember, hungry people go where the meal is being served. And for that type of hunger, they go where the children are. Whether it be a Chuck E. Cheese, a park, a Disney. When you're out, you have to be on guard because these people are everywhere. And I don't want to sound like I'm a paranoid man. Those of you, again, who have listened to us for the past 2 years know we have brought receipts. You have to be on guard.
Keep your receipts, ladies and gentlemen. Because you don't know when they're not going to be there anymore. You know, it's funny. Someone asked me before we get out of here, because Adega knows about this. Someone asked me the other day. They said, "Who wrote that? Who wrote that manifesto you were talking about, Loki?" And I said, "Well, they deleted it. They went back and deleted it and deleted the video they did. But it just so happens I have copies. So here you go. Enjoy." The internet never forgets anything.
Forgets. Jinx, you owe me a Coke.
Guys, we're out of here. Stay great. Be excellent to each other. Always speak friend to enter. We'll be back with an Orville review tomorrow morning. And we've got the Friday Night Late Show coming up tomorrow night. Take care, everybody, and have a great one.
We'll see ya.
If I can find the freaking exit button.
Push here, dummy.
These videos are tremendous. Like, comment, and subscribe, and hammer that notification bell.